Romania and Slovakia top of their group with 18 points. France second with 17 and Slovakia with 14. Slovakia with an outside chance on that 14-point mark, but the most important aspect of all, since France expected to beat Israel, is that second place position. Romania don't want to be put into any gamble of that sort and very keen on winning this game tonight. The Romanian team very strong indeed. Georgi Hagi back in after having missed the last international. Marius Lakatos is back in after suspension, and they're the team which I think is very, very much strengthened by the presence of Peter Dubovsky and Lubomir Moravcik. Moravcik playing outstandingly well in the French First Division at the moment. Very difficult for the Slovakians. They're attempting the fourth game in a row unbeaten, which would be a Slovakian record. Romania taking the initiative early on in this game. And I must say that coach Angel Iordanescu hasn't been all that happy with some of their efforts, rather regarding them as rather feckless in front of goal in particular. Georgi Hagi. Just touched away there by Karan. Well, it's been full of that kind of attacking, and the goalkeeper having an outstanding game in his match, but nowhere near that shot there by Lakatos. The great play between Munteanu and Hagi here. Hagi, beautifully swept round by Moldovan. Well, you know, watching the Romanians play like that, you have to say they've been playing some of the most attractive football in the entire European competition. We've been covering most of these games right across the breadth of Europe, and I don't think I've seen a more skillful side in this competition than the Romanians. Well, the final header there was by Ionut Lupescu, and then Popescu came up just behind him. Watch Popescu dancing away there, uncovered. There was Lupescu with it, then Popescu, and just over. And I think that's why Angel Iordanescu is very frustrated on the sideline. Lovely run through by Munteanu. Still has it. And the goalkeeper does very well, although I think Romania are now embellishing their play far too much. Well, the Slovakians have done very well. The last win, by the way, over Romania was 1942. Second half performance by Romania. That must be it now. No. Moldovan missing again. Not a very happy night for the striker, although the goalkeeper Ladislav Molnar has been quite outstanding. Well, we've hardly seen anything of Peter Dubovsky and Lubomir Moravcik up front. Played forward by Popescu. Hagi again. Little move forward. Oh, great play by Hagi. And that really should have been put away by Marius Lakatos, but what superb and typical play by Hagi. Those sudden little spurts of his from midfield, and the finish to match, desperately close. And still this tidal wave of Romanian attacking. And I think they're now becoming a little bit frustrated. This is Petrescu. Nicely judged, that must be it. Put neatly in there. Hagi. Well, doesn't he deserve that after that wonderful strike he had several moments ago? He really has been the creator, and as that was knocked across, watch him come in there. Just kept his eye on the ball. And this superb goalkeeper beaten for the first time. That's Peko on the far side. Well, there's a great effort there by Dubovsky. Not such an easy ball to take, just bouncing in front of him. And Bogdan Steler with a touch. Hagi. Munteanu going into the box and gets it, yes! Only 7 minutes of the game remaining, and a very fine last touch there by Munteanu. 2-0. Well, they've been playing glorious football, and that only makes the frustration of not being able to score more acute. And now suddenly, in the last 15 minutes of this game, they really have punished Slovakia. And now they look clearly like topping their section. It doesn't matter at all what happens now in Caen in France. Glorious play again by Hadji. He has been at his peerless best. Well, I think it would certainly do the morale of this newly formed footballing nation a great deal of good if they could at least score a goal in this game. The play has been quite excellent in defence. The problem is they haven't been able to feed Dubovsky and Moravcik in any way, and the final whistle goes. Romania ending with 21 points, clearly at the top of their group, and deservedly so, not just for the scoreline tonight, but the consistency of the quality of football they've turned in. Azerbaijan 0, Poland 0, a game of, on the surface, academic interest, but Poland, if they'd won away, could have provided an interesting problem. France go into this game with Israel with a great deal of apprehension, given what Israel did to them in the World Cup qualifying group last time, with France winning by 2-1. Israel came back and won the game 3-2. The French team picks itself. The only doubt about that team was whether they should play Loco or Mada up front, and they've chosen the man from Monaco instead of the man from Paris Saint-Germain, with Leboeuf back in the place, notably filled in the past by Alain Roche. Desailly moved more into a defensive role than he plays for Milan. And a very talented bench they have there indeed. All of them goal scorers. The Israeli side, well, Israel have played much more mature football than they demonstrated when we watched them playing in the World Cup qualifying stages. The goalkeeper, Cohen, has been preferred to Bonnie Ginsberg, principally because the coach thinks that Ginsberg is rather nervous before this game, or he judged he was. There he is sitting, and a moment's silence for the Israeli Prime Minister's assassination. A very emotional moment for everyone, and although the objective is qualifying for the European final, I think both sets of players were found in Bonn there for sympathy for the Israeli people. Well, France have had the critics for scoreless draws in this competition, but they can claim to have so far the best defensive record in the whole of the European qualifying groups. They've conceded only 2 goals. There's D'Amico. And up into the air goes Mada with that. Easily taken by Cohen, the young goalkeeper. Well, he'll be put to the test here because I would imagine either Zidane or Yuri Yorkaev. Well, Yorkaev and Zidane are both very much expert at free kicks. It's left this time to the man from Bordeaux, but the goalkeeper showing his aggression if nothing else. Well, Israel picking them off in midfield very well. Picked up by Schiller. Look at that space there. A lot of good running by Glam coming from the back for Israel. When I watched France playing in the Parc des Princes against Poland recently, and it was quite clear what the problem was. He had midfield superiority, he played a lot of intricate football, but could do nothing to get the ball into meaningful positions in the penalty area. Really lacking anybody to demolish a very stubborn defence. Nicely played forward, Zeguerin tried to go in, appeals for a penalty as Yorkayev goes down. The Paris Saint-Germain player scored 4 goals in this competition. Although I think we should discount the couple he scored against Azerbaijan, where everybody scored. France running up 10. Didier Deschamps. Just a little bit weak in that side. This is Yorkayev again, seeing plenty of the ball. Well, I think the coach is right, the Israeli coach. He dropped his experienced goalkeeper, Bonnie Ginsberg, who played, of course, in British football as well with Rangers. And he's brought the younger man in. And there he is, standing as a very firm custodian. Not a trace of nerves about that. That overhead kick by Yorkayev. Amy Jackie, the national coach, well, we know what happened to Gérard Houllier. He was 60 seconds away from the World Cup final. His hopes diminished. Once again, slag finishing. Mada in the air. While so far, Yorkayev has been the star of this attack. Not only for his own efforts, but the way he's been laying them on for others. Bernard Lam has hardly had anything to do in the match so far. Beautiful play by Lam again. Tries to lay it off. Oh. Ronnie Rosenthal. Well, it's easy enough to criticize from here. Didn't have much time to bring that down and turn. Well, Lama made that very difficult for him. Bit of space there, it's very slack defending. Oh, a little deflection. Once again, Zidane this time. And the goalkeeper making absolutely sure. Yorkayev. In goes Karambou. Ball breaking back. Yorkayev's done it. Well, nobody deserved it more than this man. I do believe he had the benefit of a very slight deflection, but he did strike that ball with great conviction. And there's a sense of relief about this celebration. Look at that, head over it, blasting it in. Well, it looked as if they would just go through this entire game, again without scoring. 69 minutes gone, they're 1 up. Back it goes to Deschamps. And this Normandy crowd really enthralled by this battle going on here. Another shot by Zidane. They don't often play internationals in this delightful little stadium. And the whole town, of course, ready for a celebration. Little bit of a flick there by Karambou. Now playing his football in Serie A, but certainly lost none of his initiative in the penalty area. Well, they're pushing Karambou right through the middle now to use that height of his. Nicely laid out there, Lizarazu. They substitute, and that clinches it. And the coolest man inside the stadium is Aimé Jacquet, the French coach. He knows there's no way back now. That's all they needed to do, just get that 2 goals in front. And the Normandy crowd celebrating. And knowing these parts and being in them recently, I know they like the Calvados here, and I think they'll be taking it by the gallonful tonight. Well, they brought this game out to the province, getting it away from Paris to exercise the ghost of that terrible defeat they had by the Israelis. And Lizarazu casts out the final spell there. The Israelis are, as I've said, a much more mature side this time round, but there the final whistle goes. The French coach receiving quite rightly and appropriately the very gentle and civilized approval of his background staff there as the players and the spectators celebrate in this tiny Normandy stadium. Bernard Lammer hurls them a little gift of his goalkeeping gloves.
Javier Clemente's Spanish side finishing up their campaign in Elche against Macedonia in Group 2. Spain in the red shirts ahead after a fine-headed goal from Kiko, the star of their 1992 Olympic side, and they're repaying the faith shown in him for selection. Kiko's header goes home on 8 minutes. This match was interrupted for 20 due to a floodlight failure before the action continued into the second half. The Macedonians guilty of being caught in possession just outside the box, and a raking shot goes home on 72 from Manjarin. 40,000 fans inside the stadium, delighted that they were to see a third goal 6 minutes later from Caminero as it finished Spain 3, Macedonia 0. So the Spaniards, who'd already assured themselves of qualification before this week's final round of matches, would be joined next summer in England by who? Denmark against Armenia for the second spot in this group. This is Copenhagen, the holders Denmark, of course, the surprise side of 92, replacing the withdrawn Yugoslavian side, and they go ahead with a goal from midfield man Schönberg on 19 minutes. Michael Schönberg putting Denmark ahead then. And they were to go on and finish second to Spain in this group and guaranteed of qualification as one of the 6 best runners-up. They were to add a second before half-time. This one from Mikkel Beck. 5 minutes previous to this, Beck had had an effort disallowed for offside, but as he holds off 2 defenders there before beating the keeper, the Danes going in comfortably, leading 2-0 at the break. Armenia, however, made a fight of it, and they were to get a goal back at the start of the second half. No one closing down the goal scorer, who's allowed to go a long way. And with a deflection from the foot of the post, Artur Petrosian scores one of the goals to remember from Armenia's Group 2 campaign. Super goal makes it 2-1, and the shocked Danish fans having a few uneasy moments before the victory and qualification was secured. They wrapped it up with a fine third goal, cross converted by the veteran Michael Laudrup. The Real Madrid man restores the 2-goal advantage on 58 minutes. So joy for Danish trainer Richard Møller-Nielsen, who complimented the Armenians after this game, saying they were competitive and forced the Danes to work hard for their victory. 3-1 then, the final score. And Cyprus and Belgium, that one finishing 1-1. The Cypriot side ahead on 18. They had a man sent off on 20. And it took the Belgians until the 66th minute to find an equaliser through Gilles de Bilde. So a disappointing end to the Belgians' campaign. They finished.
A really immense challenge for Turkey, coming to Sweden to qualify for the first time if they can for the European Championship finals. A very, very difficult occasion for them against the Swedish side, which is disappointed since finishing third in the World Cup finals, and now playing tonight for, I would say, basically a great measure of pride. I think it's going to be difficult for the Turks because the Swedes have nothing to lose. At the moment they're on 8 points, Turkey with 14 points. Switzerland have already qualified. That announcement came a couple of days ago. And so Turkey playing in this, their 299th official international, looking to make history. Shot here by Schwartz. Well, Martin Dahlin standing in on top of the goalkeeper there. The Turks didn't like that, but I think a little bit of histrionics. Just for a moment, I thought there might have been a deflection there, but Osman just drew his hand away. Trying to go through in the break as Hakan. Well, Hakan's great asset, of course. He's a very powerful player, very difficult to knock off the ball. And he likes the ball played in front of him like that for these long runs of his. And talking about long runs, Martin Dahlin, certainly I admired him as much as any striker in the World Cup. Played in there by Alpay, back by Korkut, inside to Tulinay, good play by the Turks, back again by Korkut, and the shot eventually by Oguz, a nice build-up. It stretched the Swedes using the width employed by Korkut there and ending up with Oguz's shot. Drawing Teddy Lukic out of position. Very big Turkey support here, as there will be, I think, in England if they do qualify. Like it goes to Anderson, nice little flick inside to Pedersen. Brilliantly served by Rustu. Jürgen Pedersen from Borussia Mönchengladbach with, I think, the best opportunity of the game so far. He didn't take time to control that. There was a little bit of swerve in the ball as well. The goalkeeper did excellently. And they really have this Turkish defense on the rack now. Well, the Turkish defenders have been put through it, but I saw them doing exactly the same thing against Switzerland. This is Dahlin. Can he put it away? There it is, though. First goal, Niklas Alexandersson. But 90% of it belongs to Martin Dahlin. And just underlining how valuable a man he's been to the Swedish side. If you look back over the record in the qualification for the World Cup and how he played in the finals themselves, a lot of it is down to this kind of play. Look at the way he totally disrupted that defense and eventually leaving this space away in the right-hand side, and the easiest dab in by Alexandersson. Played by Schwartz. Kind of involuntary turn of the head there. You could hardly call it a header. Just made contact with it. Well, he'd been my team. Swedes not particularly enjoying this at the moment. Even though they're one up, they've watched the team struggling over the past few months. And now the Turks really do look as if they can fight back here. Ball played right across Hakan again. Oh, undoubtedly their best result was in Switzerland when they won 2-1. And they came back from 1 goal down in that game as well. That's how close they were to the equalizer. Picked up here by Oguz. Out to Tulinay. That must be... Oh. Well, I don't know why Thomas Ravelli is having an argument with his defender. I think it was good fortune more than anything else that kept that out. The ball just going too far to Hakan's left. All credit to the Turks. This is a team with a great deal of spirit to them. Nicely paid to Korkut. There's Hakan, yes! He's done it! And there's the coach, Teren. Absolutely delighted with the way that was put in. And the Turkish support, very sizable and voluble. They've kept behind the team throughout this entire game. And both sets of players and supporters deserve that. The second half so far has been theirs, capped by this very neat header by Hakan. His fourth goal in the tournament. Despairing effort there of a Swedish defence that's looked more and more disjointed. Well, I think he got that through the celebrations more than anything else. A little bit of ice there, won't go to the head. Well, it's been an entertaining football match. Thomas Dallin hardly seen in the game. There is number 11, bound of course for Leeds United. That deal will be signed, sealed and delivered after this game. That's the official announcement. The Turkish supporters garbed for a Scandinavian winter and hoping for a blistering summer in England. Neatly played down, there's a wonderful chance, yes, Peterson! Well, he missed one or two in the first half. This time, 63 minutes, exactly a minute after that Turkish goal. And the Swedes are back in front, 2-1. Tommy Svensson on the right-hand side there doesn't look at all happy, even at this stage, because his team, even though they've gone 2-1 up, have really been on the receiving end for most of this second half. You could say that that might be a little bit of an injustice. Now can they pick themselves up? Korkut again. That was a terrible blow to them. They scored that goal after so many efforts, and you could sense the players beginning to believe in themselves again. You know, the spirit was really showing, and now they're back behind within a minute. Back to Bjorklund. Mield had come back very deep there. I think that was unfortunate there, tackle there by the goal scorer Niklas Alexandersson. Very tough-looking player indeed. Out to Lukic. Tries to get it over and missed again by Anderson. Dallin. And even that final stab at it couldn't count. And I put that down to very careful defending. Look at the way that Ugun comes right across there to snuff that out. Simple little header down. Look at the tangle of legs in there. Sheer desperation. And a phalanx of yellow jerseys keeping that ball out. The Turks are now throwing everything to try and get this vital draw. They cannot afford to lose this game. They must get a draw. If they get this draw, they know they'll be through. Well, you had Lukic in, Anderson and Bjorklund in, and eventually scrambled away. Well, I don't think I've seen a Turkish side with so much spirit as this one. That must be in, yes! That's the equalizer. "18 minutes of the game remaining, and will they ever get up from that heap?" Well, now let's sort out that tangle, because certainly Saglam, the substitute, crossed this, but I do believe there was an intervention there, and it may have come off Anderson. I suspect it did. Let's watch again as it comes across. Yes, we put that down as an own goal. They've never qualified for Europe before. The last time they were on the highest level was in 1954 when they played in the World Cup. Long, high, surely offside. As I said, back in 1954 they played and were beaten, trounced by Germany in the World Cup finals. Since then, the Turks have done nothing. They've always made passionate efforts to qualify, lacked a little bit of discipline and organization, which I think has begun to emerge in this tournament, and that almost did it again. Grave disappointment there. Corkut flashing this in, and not so far away. There can be little time left of this game. Turned out to be highly enjoyable. Dallin, could he ruin the party? No. Oh, he provides all sorts of ballers. You really need two men with this man all the time. One right on him and one just lying off him. Oh, and he almost got away with it. There we are, that's the time. The Turks on the verge of an historic breakthrough. It must be nerve-wracking for the players, the supporters, the coach, Teran, who's worked very hard for his side. The Turks are whistling for the end, and it's come. Tonight they scored their 350th goal in international football, and now the consequence of that is a trip to England in the summer, and they thoroughly deserved it. What I like about them was they were twice behind, fought back twice, and they fought back not just with gusto and cavalry charges, but with very skillful football as well, thoroughly deserving their place in the finals.
In Group 4, Italy were to finish with 2 home games in 5 days, the first against Ukraine here and then Lithuania. And they began the week 3 points behind the group leaders Croatia, but with this game in hand. Well, it's been a nervous campaign for Arrigo Sacchi's men, and the nerves really were jangling. After 19 minutes, Ukraine took a shock lead. Build up on the left from the winger Gennady Orbu, and Andrei Polunin celebrates the goal, but it might have taken a deflection on its way past the keeper. Peruzzi there stranded, and although it was the Ukrainian player Polunin who took the credit off Italian defender, and Ukraine with the early lead. However, Benariro's mistake had led to Ukraine taking the lead. He atones for that by setting up Ravanelli for the equaliser just 2 minutes later. The number 2 getting well forward on the break, chests the ball down magnificently to come between 2 defenders, but surely the Ukraine defender should have cleared his lines there, and presents Ravanelli with a chance he simply could not miss. 1-1 it was at half-time. Ravanelli, 3 minutes after the restart, was to claim a second, but once again there's a wicked deflection which leaves Ravanelli the simple chance of running the ball home from right on the goal line. However, it's his 4th goal in 5 matches, and the Juventus star certainly won't be complaining about that. Great form from him, awareness to be in the right position at the right time, and Italy take the lead. Italy save the best goal for last. Their 3rd and final one coming up on 54. Milan captain Maldini breaking forward into the box, lobs the last defender and smashes the ball past the exposed keeper. A superb goal, and Italy were home and dry. That brought them level with Croatia on 20 points at the top of the group. Might well have had more as well. So in Bari then, Italy more or less booking their path to the finals with that 3-1 win over the Ukraine. Moving forward then to Reggio Emilia and Italy's final game. Still in the blue shirts, of course, against the Lithuanians. And they would have clinched their place in next summer's finals in some style with an emphatic win here over Lithuania, who themselves were still entertaining some faint chance of making the finals at the beginning of the week. They were the only side who could have threatened Italy's second position. And Lithuania defending in depth and doing well to keep the score down in the first period. They were behind when Ramaunas Stonkus' deflection gave Italy an own goal. And then the second half was all about one man, Gianfranco Zola, on his way to a hat-trick. Well, the Parma man might have had some help with the first one, but clinical finishing there from the 6-yard line. Ravanelli was on only as a substitute in this game, losing his place in the starting lineup to Casiraghi. But Lithuania being swept aside as the Italians finished off their campaign with a rousing 4-0 win. And the Parma player rounding it off in inspired fashion with goals on 80 and 83. And that was perhaps the best of the 4 goals on the night. So Del Piero's shot deflected off Stonkus, getting them on their way on 51, and then Zola's hat-trick makes it 4-0 to Italy, the final score. And the last match in Group 4 was to see Croatia claim top spot with a narrow win in Slovenia. 2-1 means that Croatia qualify in first place in Group 4 and to be joined in England next month. One of the tightest groups of all was Group 5. Norway were in first position coming into the final round of matches, and just a draw would be good enough for them in Rotterdam against the Dutch, who were third behind the Czech Republic. Now the Czech Republic were finishing up at home to Luxembourg, and it seemed that nothing but a win was on the cards there. So the Dutch knew what they had to do before a packed house, 49,000 in the Feyenoord Stadium. They simply had to win against one of the meanest defences in Europe, the Norwegians, who had led Group 5 for over a year. The Dutch making 2 changes from the side that came back from Malta, 4-0 winners, and they're 2 important ones as well. Dennis Bergkamp, who missed that game in Malta at the beginning of October through injury, back in the side in the number 10 jersey, and alongside him, fellow gunner Glenn Helder starts the match this time, came on as a substitute in that win over Malta by 4-0. On that occasion, it was Mark Overmars the Dutch had to thank, the brilliant winger, with a second half hat-trick. And a side that lines up against Egil Olsen's Norway, finalists, of course, at the last World Cup. A nation with very limited resources of just 3 million people who've made fantastic strides in world football over the past decade. This could be the end of the line for both Egil Olsen and that ageing Norwegian side if they fail to clinch qualification, having already passed up 2 opportunities in the last 2 matches at home and away against the Czech Republic. So nearly 50,000 Dutch fans hoping to roar Hus Hiddink's side onto qualification. The Dutch did for England in this same stadium 2 years ago. And will, I wonder, it be the same for the Norwegians this evening? The Norwegians in the change strip of white shirts and black shorts. With all their Premier League stars on display, there are 3 changes to their lineup from the side that played that rather tepid friendly, frankly, against England in Oslo last month. Mark Overmars. Dennis Bergkamp with a shot that cannons off the defenders. And inside the first minute, the Dutch immediately on the attack. Well, Grodas in goal. Frode Grodas not called into a save there, replacing the injured Erik Thorsvedt. Erland Johnsen in to bolster the defence, and they preferred Erik Mikland at the start in the number 6 jersey, leaving Leon Hardson on the bench. 6 Ajax men, around which this Dutch side of Guus Hiddink is built. Arthur Newman, the only non-Ajax man in the back 4, he of PSV. Frank de Boer picking out Helder, tied to this near side touchline. Arthur Newman up supporting the attack, and Bergkamp arriving just too late, as more dangers created in front of the goal of Frode Grodas. The Dutch without both Aaron Winter and, more importantly, Patrick Kluivert, both suspended. And in the last home match here against Belarus, Hiddink was critical of Bergkamp's performance after the match, which the Dutch edged with a goal from Yuri Mulder just 7 minutes from time. Well, the Schalke band has to make do with a place on the bench tonight. That's his reward for winning the game for Holland that night. If they hadn't got that result, then this match here would have been academic by now, and Norway would have been through. Away by Bjørneby. Here's Zeedorf. Bergkamp in a good position. Zeedorf goes for the return pass, just too far ahead of him, and Grodas is out quickly to smother the danger. Clarence Zeedorf, great responsibility on his shoulders tonight. The attacking midfielder has come through the Ajax Academy and now plays in Serie A, of course, with Sampdoria, in a very exciting midfield alongside Francis Karambeu. Witschke prompting and finding Ronald de Boer. Mark Overmars, tricky, quick. Frank de Boer can't pick out an orange shirt, and there's just the lone target up front for the Norwegians tonight. Jan Arge Fjørtoft playing his 56th international. The Middlesbrough man knows that he has to do it largely alone, as Egil Olsen goes for an ultra-defensive lineup, because for Norway tonight here in Rotterdam, a draw will be good enough. First yellow card of the night. Frank de Boer for tugging the shirt of the Middlesbrough man. 1-1 in Oslo when these sides first met. That's one of just 4 goals the Norwegians have conceded, as Henning Berg goes in on the free kick. He's been inspirational to the Norwegian side throughout this campaign, scored a crucial goal at home against the Czech Republic, but they were pegged back 5 minutes from time. Otherwise, Norway would have booked their qualification 2 matches ago. Last by Huni with the in-swinging corner, and Eddie van der Sar needs to make a second grab. Eddie van der Sar, who set a new league record this season, a club record, 845 minutes unbeaten in the Dutch First Division, where of course Ajax, imperious as ever, are sweeping all before them. Newman. De Boer muscled out of it, but keeps it going, skips around Lukken. Mikland blocks the path to goal. Nice dummy, Frank de Boer. Forward from Danny Blind. And Zeedorf, can he keep it in play? And the keeper with a touch behind, making absolutely certain there was nothing for Ronald de Boer to feed off. Young Frode Grodas, certainly not unnerved by the big occasion. And I'm sure the Norwegians will be happy to get in at half-time and keep it 0-0. Away by Erland Johnsen. Fed in again. They're up in force here, plenty of orange shirts around the box, with Dennis Bergkamp tricking inside one man and then looking for Overmars on the far side, and the little man climbing high as both Berg and Johnsen go for the same ball, and Johnsen puts it behind for another corner kick. Referee tonight there in the penalty area, Dermot Gallagher from England. Lars Bohinen at the near post, formerly of Nottingham Forest and now with the champions Blackburn Rovers. Overhead kick from Frank de Boer, Zeedorf from long range, and they're getting closer. Headed out initially by Erland Johnson, and Dennis Bergkamp, who's slow coming out, goes to his legs. Well, if it had taken a touch and gone in, what I wonder would the referee's decision have been. So just to remind you, it's Norway currently leading Group 5, ahead of the Czech Republic, who one assumes must win against Luxembourg, and then Holland in third place, 3 points behind the Norwegians. Helder on the outside, poor cross. And here's Erik Mikland. Fjortoft in the centre circle, Torreflo, but easy for Danny Blind and Mikael Reitziger, who between them, well, they've always got a man over at the back, the Dutch side, and so far the Norwegians have been very cautious and fairly defensive minded. It just seems as if the rest of Europe has begun to read the Norwegian game, and to be honest, there isn't too much of it to work out. That's a wonderfully weighted ball from deep. Zeedorf, Ronald de Boer, one touch too many. Well, de Boer with the onerous task of filling the number 9 jersey, and I just wonder what Marco van Basten would have made of that chance, because it runs away from de Boer as he had Berg beaten but turned back outside the grounded Blackburn man again and wanted too much time. His 20th international. Eichel Camp was here in the last home match in that same position, as Hus Hiddink still finds it difficult to replace the brilliant and sadly missed Marco van Basten. A player of van Basten's quality only comes along maybe once every 20 or 30 years. Helder's really ripping them to shreds on this near side. He certainly has the beating of the near veteran Carl Peter Lurken, the Rosenborg Trondheim man, who made his first appearance for Norway back in '87. He's not the oldest man in the team. Minnie Jakobsen, who's seen absolutely nothing of the ball so far, the number 11 with Rosenborg, the new Norwegian champions, yet again. There he is on the far side, and that ball was never reaching him. And Jakobsen at 30, the eldest of a Norwegian side that I'm sure will begin to break up if they fail to surmount this final hurdle tonight in Rotterdam. Rekdal becomes the first Norwegian into referee Gallagher's book. And here they come again. Bergkamp and Roland de Boer, with Zeedorf supporting, are stretching the Norwegian backline, and they're playing with two out-and-out and outstanding wingers this evening, one has to say, Mark Overmars and Glenn Helder. It took a while to settle at Highbury, arrived in January, of course, for £1.2 million, one of George Graham's last signings, where Arsenal looked, and I understand do still look, to bolster the left flank. But he's now settling down in the new Premiership season, and has certainly established a great fan club there at Highbury, as he and Dennis Bergkamp have really kick-started theirs and Arsenal's season. And there he is, the man of the first half. Well, the Dutch flags may be waving here in the Feyenoord Stadium, but as yet there are still no goals to show for all the pressure and domination. Berg's header may fall for Glenn Helder, and a fist from Grodas. Bohinen can get it away, trying to dribble out of danger, and it's not away yet. Fed in again by Blind, but now there's a reprieve for the Norwegians. Beleaguered defence, but a strong defence it is of Olsen's. And that was a let-off as Helder fastened onto that poor, misguided clearance of Henning Bergs, but failed to deliver the final volley. Jakobsen dispossessed by Michael Reitziger. Wave upon wave of orange attacks here in Rotterdam. A ground that's been good to the Dutch over the years, especially when it matters, the big occasion, the European champions of 1988, beating the former Soviet Union in Germany. A final which saw a stunning goal from Van Basten and a first half header from Ruud Gullit. Two of the great players to wear the Dutch orange shirt of recent years. De Boer, who's been something of a disappointment in this first period. Blind on the far side to the tricky Overmars. Again, it's a super cross from Overmars onto the head of Dennis Bergkamp. And although Dennis is not noted for his heading ability, clear sight of goal there as Overmars cleverly looked up and weighted a superb ball into the box, where Bergkamp found himself just underneath the ball and unable to get the power to direct the header downwards. But see how he loses his marker. Both Berg and Jonsson being put under the microscope here this evening. Here comes Seedorf again. He's been involved in everything. 1-2 with Bergkamp, but this is a great chance, but it's squandered. They are just lacking the calm finish inside the box where it matters. You can see there how Seedorf was so intelligently set up by Bergkamp, and he allowed the ball to run away from his feet. That's a foul by Erland Jonsson on Bergkamp. And Jonsson may have had a case there. However, right at the end of the first period, it gives the Dutch one final opportunity to open the scoring. Into the wall, and you do feel that Hussitting's side just need that spark, the confidence a goal would give them. But after 45 minutes here in the Feyenoord Stadium, the two nations going at half-time in the first period from the Norwegians, fielding 5 players from the English Premier League, of course. Erland Jonsson, Henning Berg, Stig Bjørneby, Lars Bohinen, Jan Åge Fjørtoft, who's had really nothing to work with up front as we get underway in the second half. Still at 0-0. And the Norwegians immediately showing a little more endeavour. Right at the start of the second period. I think that's the first attack where I've seen them support Fjørtoft. And here they come again. Flow from the byline and underneath the crossbar. Good catch from Van der Sar. Has now made the Dutch goalkeeping position very much his own. And that was tricky with Jan Åge Fjørtoft just making sure that the Dutch keeper knew he was around. Guus Hiddink, who's had his critics through this campaign, having taken over from Dick Advocaat when the whole of Holland were hoping to see the appointment go to Johan Cruyff, very much the people's choice. And this could be the opener for Holland. It is. It comes on 48 minutes. And a bizarre goal to the name of Clarence Seedorf. And you'll see on the replay, agony for defender Erland Jonsson, because his clearance cannons off the body of the Sampdoria man, and the ricochet looping over stranded keeper Grudas to give the Dutch the goal they had been looking for. No denying that Holland deserved to take the lead, but it comes here in outrageous circumstances. A great stroke of good fortune for the Dutch, and 3 minutes after the restart, at last they have the breakthrough. And how different it was all looking for Holland back at the beginning of the summer when they lost 2 critical games back-to-back, 3-1 in the Czech Republic. And then, outrageously in June, they went down by a 0-0 in Belarus. But they're on their way here at last in Rotterdam. A goal from that man, Clarence Seedorf. Well, all he'll point to is tomorrow morning's newspapers that show him as the goal scorer. Never mind the circumstances, they all count. And perhaps in a match of this importance, that's just what you need. And the Norwegians now in a position that they hate having to come from behind and change their tactics. They'll need to chase this game if they're to get back into it. Only an outright win for the Dutch will be good enough, and even then they may well have to face a playoff at Anfield, because their record, should they win this one, amongst the second place sides is not a good one. Helder goes outside his man, teasing Lurken, who's had a nightmare, and over his own bar by Ellen Johnson. Provider of the opening goal, but no blame to the Chelsea man. Great misfortune for him, joy in the Dutch camp, and Seedorf has made his mark. Has certainly added thrust and impetus to this Dutch lineup. Overmars with the corner kick. Before then, Olsen wants to bring on Øyvind Leonhardsen. Off goes Erik Mikland. And on comes the bustling, busy midfield man. On the wrong end of a drubbing Nottingham Forest in his last Premier League encounter, and immediately defending this corner kick by the post. It'll come out to the goal scorer Seedorf this time. Can't hit the target. So Norway do need a goal. A draw for the Dutch will not be good enough. And I can't remember a scene where the Dutch keeper Van der Sar has seriously been threatened. The qualifiers, if anything, have gone on just a couple of months too long for a nation that has just finished their own domestic season. They're not used to playing football through our winter, and their winter too, which is far worse than ours, of course. And just for the statisticians amongst you, Rosenborg Trondheim have just wrapped up the league by a massive 15 points. Bohinen looking for one of the stars of that Rosenborg side, who are still involved in the Champions League, of course. Mini Jakobsen there. Flo gets a cross in. That's the second time he's done that from the byline, but there's nobody behind Fjørtoft. And the chance goes a-begging. Well, the Norwegians are going to have to start piling more bodies forward now if they're to make a game of this. And at the same time, of course, they will run the risk of being exposed at the back. Rugged features of Erlend Johnsen. Seedorf. Danny Blint. Square. Arthur Neumann. On the far side, Glenn Helder. Well worth feeding him. The Dutch have a substitute on. It's Johan de Kook. Blint again. No offside flag. And Ronnie de Boer. Well, that's the closest he's come. Flashing header from de Boer. It was just behind him. He did well. And that one wasn't too far away from giving the Dutch a second goal. Surely they'll need that to make the game absolutely safe. In the meantime, back come the Norwegians. And Haaland, who's come on as a substitute on the end of that header, but couldn't guide it down into the path of the supporting players. Alf Inge Haaland. And it's Lurken who's been withdrawn, so they are now taking defenders off the pitch and looking to support the front man, Jan Arge Fjørtoft, who's been ploughing a lone furrow for much of the game. Overmars is stopped in his tracks. Good tackle too. Lars Bohinen. Needs a spark of magic from him. Something might be happening here. Now they've got 4 men up on this raid from Holland on the far side. Needs a good cross, and it's just behind Fjørtoft. Agonisingly so for the Middlesbrough striker. Formerly, of course, with Swindon Town. And now part of that resurgence at the new Riverside Stadium on Teesside. And already a goal scorer with an assist from Juninho making his debut. Ståle Solbakken is on for Lars Bohinen, who had taken a knock. And the Dutch are still leading by a goal to nil deep into the second half. The Czech Republic by this time were ahead in their game against Luxembourg, so it was all going wrong for Norway. A side perhaps now past their best, and if they don't make the trip to England, then we can expect to see both Olsen passing the reins over to a younger man. I'm sure that he will go, and Norway will have to look to their resources and start to refashion a new team. Here's the goal scorer, and Erlend Jonsson and Henning Berg between them, keeping the ball away from Dennis Bergkamp, who has faded somewhat in this second half, it has to be said. And the break on for Norway now, 3 against 3. Here goes Flo, they're backing off, still Flo into the penalty area. Back for Haaland, will he try the shot? No, it's a chip for Fjørtoft, and that's the best opportunity that Norway have created in the whole match so far, and Jan Åge Fjørtoft holds his head in his hands because he knows Norway may not get many more opportunities, certainly not one as good as that, but he couldn't hit the target. Van der Sar didn't need to make a save, and the Norwegians still trail. Henning Berg forward, typical Route 1 play from the Norwegians. Here goes Seedorf. That's a superb ball, almost getting Overmars in. Here's Rekdal. Jakobsen has hardly been seen. They've given it away again, and 1 or 2 heads going down. And on the break now, Seedorf picking out Overmars. He only has to feed Yuri Mulder, who's come on as a substitute. And for the second home international in a row, Mulder scores a vital goal for his side. And the Dutch now surely are through to next summer's finals on 87 minutes as the Norwegians pushed forward, caught, exposed at the back, 2-on-1. Mark Overmars doing the sensible thing, a square ball in for the Schalke player, and enough time to tee up the shot before burying it beyond Frode Grodås, and the Norwegians down and out surely at 2-0 with just 3 minutes on the clock. "50,000 Dutch voices raised in celebration. The flags are flying. The whole city of Rotterdam turns orange this evening. And what a disaster for the Norwegians. Twice they had opportunities to wrap up this group in their 2 previous matches, and they're to pay the penalty of pushing upfield as they concede a 3rd goal. Well, that's harsh, in fact, on Norway. But on 89, Mark Overmars' solo after a 40-yard run seals victory on a great night for Holland. When the chips were down and it mattered, once again the Dutch have come through, just as they did against England 2 years ago. And Overmars, another superb performance from him, a winger who can score goals as well as create. It's the final nail in the Norwegian coffin. At 3-0, the Dutch will now certainly get into second place, and we know that they will have to play off in Liverpool on December the 13th if they are to make the finals in 1996. A job well done for Hus Hiddink. 3 goals all in the second half, and the Dutch are there. However, no doubt about the group winners, the Czech Republic, who've got stronger and stronger the longer this group has gone on. They would have claimed top place with a 3-0 win over Luxembourg before an ecstatic crowd in Prague. Nothing less than they would have expected. The Czech Republic, who had beaten Norway 2-0 at home in their previous match, went on to score 2 more in the second half. Druláč with the first. And Luxembourg keeper Koch given no chance there with the second. And the best of the night in Prague, the third and final goal. The Czechs have looked a different side once Thomas Skuravi buried his differences with the federation and agreed to come back into the national side. And the Czech Republic then finish top of Group 5. So their qualification is secured. The Dutch, securing second place, go forward to that playoff in Liverpool next month.
Even on a very kind night for a team, a visiting team, this place can be a very fearsome stadium, the Stadium of Light, putting terror into some of the most experienced players, and the Irish with a simple but very difficult task in mind, to win this game outright and put beyond any dubiety the possibility of them failing by not being a properly qualified second best team. It's very complicated, of course. There's Vitor Baia, by the way, the Porto goalkeeper, had a quite outstanding series, held to the defender from Benfica, Oceano. Fernando Couto playing his football now with Parma, Figo now with Barca, João Pinto with Benfica, the 3 players, the 3 foreign players. Paulinho Santos there with Porto. A tremendous crowd, and I think obviously will inspire this side. The Portuguese will be favourites, but the Irish never travel alone. That team you're seeing now will be supported by something like 20,000 Irishmen. And you get 20,000 Irishmen together, I think they'll outshout the rest of the 50,000. John Aldridge, the veteran, back in playing his football for Tranmere. And there's Jack Charlton. Many people think that he wants to retire, but I doubt that very much. I think if there's the slightest sniff of a chance of their qualifying, he'll be there. And there's the referee, the Italian referee. And this should really be some game. There's no doubt that the Irish, on an occasion like that, when the chips are down, play with a great deal of fire and passion. And what a tribute to this man, Charlton. He has his critics, been many critics criticising the style of play, mentioning playing the long ball too often, cutting out midfield. But when you have a situation like that, a manager can simply point to his track record. And he's taken Ireland from being a fringe nation, which gave a few chuckles to people whenever their name was mentioned in footballing circles, and made them into a side that everybody fears to play. Even the Portuguese tonight. A pass forward here by Paulo Sousa. And there Paul McGrath, breaking an Irish international record tonight in his 79th international. Hard into the tackle, an uncompromising, straightforward player in the sense that he knows exactly what he has in mind and does it simply. And that was a very telling tackle, a very significant one, because what it does do is signal to the Portuguese what kind of defence they're going to be up against tonight. They won't take prisoners, but do it very fairly, of course. While the many thousands of Irish who've come to the stadium may have been expecting some sun here, but it's rather wet. I don't want to be too unkind to the Irish, but it may remind them of 1 or 2 days in the Emerald Isle. This is Secretario. Irish team, of course, badly affected by injury. They've got Kennedy in there, Kenner, John Aldridge brought back in, Steve Staunton, and that's a glorious clearance there by Gary Kelly. The Leeds United player who very shortly be joined by that outstanding Swede, Brolin, really getting back there, keeping his eye intently on the ball. Difficult ball played beyond that Irish defence. Well, they're picking the ball up just outside the penalty area like that, the Portuguese, but I think in these conditions, the first touch is absolutely essential, of a top priority to get it right. They are nothing but colourful. Well, the Irish have had 10 defenders back for most of the time, as the Portuguese have pounded down on them, and Niall Quinn hasn't had all that many opportunities, left up by himself. John Aldridge going back occasionally and certainly playing his heart out for his country, as they all do. Paulinho Santos, Figo. I remember Figo playing in the stadium a couple of years ago, the World Cup qualifying game, and destroying Scotland in a brilliant display of football. Hasn't been quite as effective tonight, playing against a different caliber of opposition in midfield all the same, and away goes Figo again. Reminiscent of, he's a kind of George Best kind of player, let's put it that way. Likes to move the ball about and take on defenders, as you can see here. Very reluctant to lay it sideways. Eventually he did. Well, the build-up was sufficiently slow enough to allow that Irish defence to organise themselves again, and they're taking these long shots, that one by Oceano, in their stride. Well, there's the face that launched 1,000 celebrations. Portuguese just getting a little bit edgy now. The Irish so far have been very successful. They haven't been plying many furrows in the opposition penalty area, but